Good morning, this is John Capocha, and I'm going to start another woodworking project. And I'm going to build a dresser for my daughter who recently got married. This will be a wedding present. So I'm going to make it out of walnut, rustic walnut. So here, I'll show you what I've got here. But first, I'll give you a little preview here. This is the finished dresser. So we'll start with that and show you how it all came together. Okay, here's the material I've got. She wanted it to be somewhat rustic. So I bought this rustic walnut, and you know, it's quite very interesting. A lot of lighter and darker spots, and a few knots and things like that. So that's what she wants. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And I've got some maple I'm gonna use for the drawer sides. So before I get started, since my last dresser project, I've acquired some new tools. I have a nice saw stop. This thing is awesome compared to that rickety old Craftsman that I had, and I just got this from Rockler and put it together, a nice woodworking bench. And I've also got a little cheap dust collection. It's just use it with my Craftsman vacuum. It's got a separator and it works pretty good. I can hook it up to the back of the saw stop. Oh, I can't see it here. And if you hook it up to my bandsaw, and it works pretty well. So it makes the cleanup easier. So anyway, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy something that's commercially available. Let's see if I can get that shadow or that light out of here. So the dresser is going to look something like this. It's going to be roughly 60 inches wide, 21 inches deep, and 36 inches high. And I've got this little bit of, I'm going to try to put this little bit of detail in there. And that's what my daughter said she likes, but this is, to me, this is not really a very high quality piece of furniture. So, but I'm going to kind of model the design after that. So this is just a small shot of the corner just to show some of the details that I'm going to try to replicate here. So I try to just roughly sketch out what it's going to look like, but I don't want to go into too much detailed drafting, and my skills are kind of deteriorated over the years. And I'm going to just sort of build it as I go. So anyway, I'll get started, and we'll do several videos to show you how I'm going to do it, and we'll see how it comes out. All right, I'm going to start with the legs. And what I have here is a piece of 8/4, and it's been planed. So it's really about 1 3/4. So that's what I'll make the legs out of, 1 3/4. So this looks pretty good here. I mean, there's a knot here. I can avoid that. So if I just cut 36 inches from this, I can cut that middle knot out of there. And that'll work pretty good. Then there's a little low spot here, so I can start my next piece there. And I think that'll be pretty good. So, okay, so I'll just go ahead and start cutting that up. Okay, we're off to a good start. There's the 4 legs all ready to go. So I'll set those aside, and we'll start cutting the wood for the top. Now for the top. So what I've got here is 5/4. So planed down to about 1 inch thick, which is perfect. So I've got one really long board here. Well, the other one's really long too, so we're going to go about 21 inches wide. So So you can see this is almost 9 inches. So if I double this up, then with some of this, then we easily get to 21 inches thick or deep. So that's what I'm going to do, is cut 2 sections out of the wide board and 1 out of the narrower board, and then we'll glue them up. All right, I've cut the wider board into 2 pieces, and I've planed 1 edge. So the edge matches up pretty nice, but you can see there's a warp. Look here, or a little high there, and here. So what I did is I oriented the board so this one is bent this way, this one is bent this way. So when I glue them up, the warp will cancel each other. So I'm gonna, first thing I'm gonna do is run it through the table saw, get rid of this rough edge, and then plane that to make sure that both sides are parallel for both boards. Then I'm gonna glue it up, and then I will plane the last board and then glue that one to join these, and then I'll cut it off to the exact width. Okay, here's a mock-up of the glue up, and so what I did is I clamped the ends here to make sure it's even along there and there, and to get rid of the warp in the middle, I put some weights on here. So now it's pretty even. So there's no glue yet. I'm just trying to get it all in position here. So just a little bit of unevenness, but that could be easily sanded out. You know, I mean, that's not even way less than a 64th of an inch. So I think that's going to work out. So I'll take everything apart. We'll put some glue and then put the weights back and then clamp it up. All right, there we are, all glued up. Okay, glue up is complete. The last board that I put in went in pretty good. I didn't have to bend too much. So it came out very, very flat and very even. I scraped a little bit, and with a little more scraping and sanding, it'll be perfect. Okay, so next up, I'll start working on the sides. Okay, I've got, as I mentioned before, I've got the top cut, rough cut. There it is, all glued up. And I'm pretty happy with the grain, it looks pretty good. Then what I've done too is I've cut some boards roughly to length, that these will be used for the drawer fronts. So each one will roughly be cut in half and used as a drawer. So yeah, that, you know, I chose these boards just for out of my stash of hardwood here for the grain and detail on it. So I haven't decided yet whether I'll leave some of those knots in, or depending on how wide the drawers are. Some are, 2 drawers are 8 inches, 4 are 7 inches, and 1 is 4.5. So we'll work that out later, but I just wanted to set those aside. So now I'm working on the sides. It's going to be pretty simple, solid panels, no book match grain or anything. So I'm just gluing those up right now. Then we'll start putting the legs on them. Legs are set aside over there. They're ready to go. And so let's take a look. Here's where we're at with kind of the design. Let me go into a little bit more. So I've kind of drawn out what it's going to look like here. So it's pretty simple. We're going to have just a little bit of detail here where this is about 1 inch thick, and it's going to extend out around sort of as a detail, and this front port will protrude out. So here's the side view. So I put some dimensions on it. So as you can see, this front part will protrude out a little bit. I'm just going to glue a 3/4 inch piece onto the leg, and then this little detail will be about a 1/2 inch thick with a rounded edge, and that will go all the way around, come up and go around like that. And a little bit of detail on the bottom. This will not protrude out, but I just wanted to have that little 3/4 inch there just to give it some visual interest. Again, it's a pretty simple design. This doesn't serve any functional, any utility, nor does this. And one thing I like about Stickley furniture and arts and craft in general, everything's very functional. There's very little put on it that's just for looks. But again, my daughter found something that she liked as an example, so I'm going to try to put these little detail things on here just to satisfy her design taste. So I think it's going to come out pretty good. So that's where we're at. So I'm just going to continue working on building the sides up here. All right, the side panels are cut. So they're ready to go. Now what I'm going to do is, next step is I'm going to cut a dado into the legs, and then cut a rabbit on both sides here so it fits into the legs. So we'll go ahead and do the dado first, because I think it's easier to cut the dado than to match the rabbit to the dado than vice versa. All right, the dado is all set up, and I've got a stop at the end, so when I run it through, it's going to hit that stop, and the dado will stop about right there. So with a test piece, I've done some test cuts. So the idea is to get the width of this board is exactly the width of the sides. So I've got that cut centered exactly in the middle. So got the dado all set up to cut the tongue. So this is just a test piece, and it's really good. Okay, so we're ready to start cutting the tongue on the panels. Just a little bit tight, but I think using the little block plane we'll be able to clean that up and make it fit. So that looks pretty good. Here's the two sides mocked up, and of course I made a mistake. I had to wind up cutting the groove all the way through because I forgot to, on each side they're, they have to face each other, and I did not account for that. So I'll have to put a little plug in there. It won't hardly be noticeable. But again, there's always mistakes. So I think what I'm going to do now is just lay the top on the two sides and just see what it looks like, and then we'll take it from there. Here's a kind of a mock-up. Just laid the tabletop or the dresser top on top of the sides. And I also put these little extensions on right here. Just put it on with some double-sided tape. So below that will be that little bit of detail that sticks out, and it's going to go all the way across. So, but it's a very large dresser. But again, it's modeled after the one that I showed on my iPad there. It's about 66 inches wide, 36 tall, and 21 deep. So pretty massive. This is going to be one heavy dresser. Okay, a little dilemma that I'm trying to solve here. Okay, this is the top drawer comes here and projects out by about 3/4 of an inch, and this will be a little curly Q thing down here. I just put this block here just to describe the issue. So anyway, this is, I mocked this up just out of a scrap piece of oak, and this is what I want to do, is have a rounded edge here and flat on the bottom for the drawer support on the first shelf only. And then we're going to come around with this molding around all the way through. So just trying to figure out how to do this. This looks like kind of a complicated cut here. So I'm wondering what the best way to do it is. What I might wind up doing, instead of having one piece here, I'll just use 1/2 inch thick and, you know, cut it out as needed and just sandwich another board to the bottom rather than trying to make this complicated cut and getting the bandsaw and cutting in on that. So I'm going to think about that a little bit, but I've been mulling this over for the last couple of hours of how I'm going to do this. So it's definitely doable, so we'll just play with it a little bit more, then we'll figure something out. All right, I'm about to make a cut for that little bit of detail, and this turned out to be kind of complicated, so I built a little jig, had a tough time figuring out how to support it. So I think I got it all lined up. So we've got a 3/8 bit and you know, a bushing to guide it along the edge here. So we're going to give it a try. Wish me luck. Here we go. There we are, got the groove cut. So now I'll do the same for the panels on the sides. Well, there's the grooves in the side panels. All right, I've got one of the sides dummied up here. No glue yet, just all press fit. So far so good. Had to make, you know, I decided not to do the little curve on the bottom. I just decided to keep it straight and not go through the hassle. So I glued this up. It's got a little recess there. So that's where the bottom drawer support's going to fit right in that slot. So what I tried to do with the design here is make it a little bit simpler from what I did with the Stickley design. So we're going to cut in here, we're gonna cut the dados right across there. And what I wanted to do was get this all level. So I can just, then I'm gonna glue it up and then cut the dados, so now I can be sure that they're absolutely square and true and a mirror image of each other. Just that way when I fit the drawers, it'll be a little bit easier. I did a lot of work on hand fitting the drawers last time because things were just a little bit off. So that was my main concern. You know, I'm just sacrificing maybe a few little design details just to make it easier to assemble. And for, you know, the fit and finish, just being a little bit more accurate. So now what I'm going to do is just sand things and get them prepped before I glue it up, and then we'll glue it up, then we'll cut those dados for the drawer supports. Just doing the final sanding before I glue everything up, but I'm also filling the little holes, little knots with epoxy. So I use some black plastic epoxy, just something I copied from Fine Woodworking, where he says on walnut just use black epoxy. Now he mixed clear epoxy with some black pigment, but I happen to have some plastic bonder. It says you can use it on wood, so I filled the holes and scraped them down and sanded them, and they seem to come out pretty good. So there's an example there. See if you wet it. Looks pretty black. So we'll see. You know, it's not going to be perfect. It's rustic, so you know, it is what it is. Okay, ready for glue up. So this is, I've got all the clamps ready. This is a configuration, and it's really, I've got clamps on the top here just to balance things out. It's really, I want to be sure that I get these things exactly parallel to each other. So I'll adjust the clamps as needed to give it a little twist as needed. Just make sure everything is nice and square and parallel. So that's it. So I'll take it apart and put some glue on it and clamp it up. There's the final glue up on the first side. Looks exactly like the mock-up, except I put two other clamps here just to make sure that this glue joint down here is really solid. So while that's drying, I'll let it go for a couple of hours here, then clamp up the other one. But meanwhile, I'm going to start cutting these little detail pieces here. So you see that little thing here. So what I'm going to do is use this bit here, and I kind of drew it here. You could see it in blue. So that's going to make that inside cove in there and make a couple of passes, bring it out a bit. I'll go extra long, then I'll cut it off, then use a round over bit to make that curve. So I'll leave plenty of flat area up here just to stabilize things while I route it. Then I can always cut it off to trim to whatever dimension I want. And then maybe, I don't know, we'll see what happens, but I might just put a little V notch in there somewhere just to fancy it up a bit. So we'll use a nice, this is just a scrap left over, but I'll use a nice wide board just because it's nice and stable when I'm running this against the fence of the router. Then I'll just need two pieces. I'll cut off, and the rest, we'll throw in the scrap pile or maybe save it for another project for another day. Okay, made a couple passes there, so I'm going to make one more pass to go just a little bit deeper. So I've already raised the level, and I've made marks where I start and finish as I make progressive cuts across. So we'll get this set up for the first one. Okay, here we go. I'm ready to cut the dados for the shelf supports or the drawer supports. So I made another jig here and got it clamped and cut a 3/4 inch dado right through here and keep it right up against the fence here, and that should do it. Well, we've got all the grooves cut, and now I'm just trying to mock it up, test fit things here. So what I'm working on right now is this corner detail. So this is basically the look that I want to achieve. So this is a top drawer support here. Now this is turning out to be pretty complex. Okay, so that's a bit of a complex cut here. And it's still not right. So, because I've got this right now just fits into there, but really at this end here, this has got to go into the dado, so I need to remove more material. But no matter what I do, it's going to be kind of complicated. So what I'm thinking of doing is just notching this piece out here, about 3/8 of an inch, the depth of the dado there, basically extending that through, and we'll see just a little bit of a reveal of the bottom of the support coming out to there. So that might be the easiest thing to do. The other thing I thought of doing was, well, let me put this back in here. And what I thought of doing was just making this piece with this bull nose edge 3/8 thick, and just cutting, making that a separate part, then just cutting a rabbet in this end and gluing that piece to it. But I don't know, that gets kind of complicated too, so there's just no easy answer here, or if there is an easy answer, I just haven't thought of it. And probably I'll be kicking myself when it's all done, when I have thought of a better way after I did it the hard way. So anyway, this is kind of a vexing problem here because it's just going to be kind of complicated. And you know, most of these cuts I did on the bandsaw. Then I got to think about it. It's a really long piece of wood across there, and I got to make these cuts on both ends. And you know, how's that going to work on the bandsaw? So anyway, I'm going to think about this a little bit more, and we'll take it from there. Here's an update. I just decided to notch out that little piece there. And so this piece basically remains the same. I had to change the dimensions a little bit, and that'll fit right in that little notch. And I think that'll work. Okay, where I'm at right now is this is the very first drawer support that will be under the first level of drawers. It's the one that protrudes out and has kind of a bull nose on it. So I have carefully made this cut using the radial saw, standing it up like that. And I made this cut on the bandsaw against the fence, so that worked out pretty good. It's pretty accurate. And now what I'm doing is I've got to, again, it was really good that I made this little mock-up piece here. So that's what this is doing. I cut this board long because the challenge is going to be to get this 45-degree angle. I still don't know how I'm going to cut that. Might just have to do it by hand. You know, my hand saw skills aren't that good. Not sure otherwise how I can do that, just because that board is so long. It's a little difficult to maneuver on the bandsaw, but it's possible. We'll play around, see what we can do. But the next thing I have to do is just cut that out. Then I can fit it in there, and then I'll do the rabbit under here, then do the bull nose on the front. So just getting things ready. The other thing I've got to do is just cut a little dado like this. Excuse my sloppy work there. I got a little sloppy, but this is going to be on the bottom. So this is upside down. So the middle drawer divider will sit like that. Then I'll cut a few dados in here for the bottom levels of drawers, and the supports will go into there. So that's got to be done. Then on the back end, just cutting dados all the way through so that the 1/4 inch you know, dividers can go in there and everything can piece together. So that's what's up right now. I haven't really bored you too much with showing you the cuts on the saw. That's kind of routine stuff. So anyway, all coming together very, very slowly. All right, I'm ready to round over the edge on the second drawer support. So I've got a round over bit set up in the router table. So here we go. Okay, I've raised up the bit to meet the edge of this. So we'll round the bottom part of it. Here we go. I have to cut the miter here. See that? It's hard to see. And cut that off right there. So what I think I'm going to do is clamp a block to it to guide me and do it with a handsaw. Okay, these are the center drawer supports. So on each side there'll be a drawer, and the drawers will just slide past it like that. Slight design change. I decided to just go straight across here instead of mitering these and bringing this back to go 3/8 of an inch protruding. All right, next on the list, I'm going to drill little 3/8 holes here and are carefully measured out. And I put a little dimple, and a 3/8 hole is going to hold a 3/8 dowel that will serve as the door stop. So the back of the drawer stop, the back of the drawer will come right up against the dowel. So I'm using a Forstner bit, and the depth of that is just about perfect. So I'll go just below the surface, and that's how I'll know where to stop. All right, it's a little tight, but I can sand that and it'll fit perfectly. This is the front apron that sits underneath the bottom shelf support. And what I'm doing is I'm going to dowel it to the bottom shelf support, which is right here. So this sits on top of it. And this has got a bit of bow in it, so this is a way to straighten it out, and just make sure that it's glued up real tight and won't move. Got a little line drawn on there. It's the upper line that I'm going to. Drilling the holes in the bottom of the drawer support is going to be a little more difficult. I can't use the doweling jig, which is nice because it centers it on the board. Trouble is, this is an offset. So this is longer here than it is here. I tried making a little shim to put in there and clamp the doweling jig to it, but it was really hard to handle. So I'm just going to do it by hand and see what happens here. I think I could make probably a better spacer, but not sure it's worth it, so I'm just going to do it by hand. All right, I've got a mark here, about 5/8 of an inch. Okay, there's the test fit. It all seems to fit pretty good. Punched through from the top there, but that's okay because it's going to be hidden by the vertical. And I punched through on the first one, went a little too deep, so I'll have to patch that, and we'll see what we can do to make that look kind of natural. But mistakes happen, so no big deal. I mean, the drawer sits over it, you're never really going to see it. So anyway, ready to glue it up. Okay, all clamped up, and I've cleaned the glue squeeze out, so just let it set, and we'll move on to the next thing. Okay, got everything more or less mocked up. It's going to be a real challenge to glue this up. I still don't know how I'm going to do it. It's just too many parts. But anyway, going to take a break. I've got to go get some plywood for the drawer separators. And then I really got to think about how to put this together. What I'm thinking so far is I'm going to put together the frame and glue these to the posts. And then I'm going to slide in all these pieces. Well, this is already glued up the top. And I'm gonna slide these in, glue them in. And these are the tricky parts here. These, they're a two-piece. So they're gonna be a little challenging to get in there. So that's kind of the part I have to figure out. Then, you know, maybe glue those into the face frame and try to hold them somewhat stable. And then slide in the plywood panels, then attach the back pieces. So I think. So I've got to think that through. Again, it's going to be a little challenge. This is the most complicated project I've ever done. But it's coming along. I think it's going to be good when it's done. I just hope I don't screw something up trying to glue it together. Okay, first phase of glue up. I got the bottom support glued in, and the second one is glued in, and the center stringer is glued in. So I'm just gonna let that set up, and then we'll go ahead and put the drawer rails, for the front part of the drawer rails in, and we'll take it from there. Glue up is progressing. So I've got the bottom drawer separator glued up and in place. So next step is to put the drawer supports here and there, and put in the rest of the drawer supports on the sides. And then we'll put the middle support in over here. And looks like it's coming together pretty easily, not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. Okay, it's all basic frame is ready to go. I laid the top on there just to look at it. It's got to be trimmed down a little bit. It overhangs the back, and I haven't determined how much it's going to overhang the side. Right now it's about 3/4 overhang on the front. That looks about right. I put the little detail here in the center. So it's looking pretty good. All right, what I'm doing now is just giving the drawer separators a quick seal of shellac, and then installing them, and then just checking to make sure that I don't have any edge where the drawers can catch when I put the back piece in. So this is just shellac. I cut it 50% with denatured alcohol. So it's just a sealer basically. I'm not looking to put a finish on here. Now, one thing, I'm not sure if I'm going to glue these in. I may just leave them. You know, one thing I did differently about this dresser than the Stickley reproduction I made is that I'm just putting a plywood back on here, and so I'm going to screw it into, you know, all along here, and that'll hold these in. So there's really, I don't think, any reason to glue it. And so for some reason, if you needed to do something, take out the panels, this way you can do it. You can remove the back, pull these off, and just slide the panels out. So I may just do that. I've just completed finishing or fitting all the drawer fronts. So they're all done. This one is in place. The others are just stacked up over here. So now I am just looking at the top, and that's a full 1 inch thick, the top. So I've got it positioned kind of where I think it's going to go, but what I want to consider is maybe just cutting a little cove in here, just to give it a little bit more detail. So I'm going to just use a bit like this and just go ahead and cut a little cove in there. Then I'm going to see how it looks, and I've got plenty of material to work with here. It's hanging over quite a bit on the other end and on the back. So the other thing I might consider is maybe just cutting a chamfer on here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the cove first, see how it looks, and maybe on the other side I'll cut the chamfer and turn it around and just see which one I like better. And then I'm going to cut this to size and set it aside while I go ahead and make the drawers. Well, here's another twist here. As you can see, I cut that little cove. Now the top is upside down right now. This is really the bottom, and this is really the face, but I'm looking at it with that cove, and I kind of like the way that looks with the cove on the top. So something else I've got to consider here. So what I'm thinking of doing now is maybe just cutting that little chamfer here and seeing how that looks. I've got, I'm gonna maybe use one of these dovetail bits here. So these are two different angles. I don't know what they are, but this one here is a little bit of a steeper angle than this one. So we'll see. I gotta think about this a little bit. So there it is as originally intended, but the problem is with this, with the cove on the bottom, is that you really don't see it. If you're standing like from this perspective, you don't see it. So I don't think that's going to work. So we'll take a look at some other alternatives here. Well, here's what we settled on, is just a little cove. And I opted not to put the chamfer on the bottom. I tried it, didn't really like it. So I think that looks pretty good. Of course, as usual, make little mistakes. I finished it all and didn't mark which was the back and the front, and mistakenly used this as the front. It was supposed to be the back, so that knot sits there right in the front, but that's okay. The intent was for this to, you know, have somewhat of a rustic look, so I don't think that's a big problem. I'll just fill the rest of that little gap there and it'll be fine. All right, I'm just plowing through cutting the dovetails. So what I'm doing is the backs of the drawers first. So I'm about, 3/4 of the way through my drawers, but this is how I'm doing it. First thing, scribe a line, which is the thickness of the back of the drawer. Then I'm taking just one that I've already done as a template, and just going to mark the position of my tails here. Take that and bring them across. Let's forget to do that. Okay. And I'll just gauge and mark them. Okay, then I'd like to make a little mark just to remind me to cut to the inside of that line. And again, just X out stuff that's going to be cut. Okay, now we're ready to take it over to the bandsaw and cut those out. Okay, now we'll just chisel out the space for the pins. Just line that up to where the scribe is. Okay, now we're going to just transfer these cuts to the actual back of the board. So first thing I like to do is put a little guide in here. So I could come up right against the bottom and just I just put a big weight on it just to hold it down while I scribe it. And I can just kind of tap it into position. Okay, that looks pretty good. And just get my knife. And I just like to darken the lines. Okay. And again, I've got a scribe mark along here. That is the width of that piece. Same for the other side. Okay, now we'll take it over the table saw and hog out that material. First, of course, just mark out the part that I'm going to cut. I guess I've done enough of these by now where I shouldn't get confused, but I do. So it's just helpful just to make sure I'm cutting the right part out. Okay, so we'll take it over to the table saw. There you go. Clean that up with a little sandpaper. All set. All right, let's see how it fits. Not too bad. It's a little tight over here. You can see where I kind of missed the mark here. So I'm just going to take it over to the table saw and shave a little bit more off right there, and I think we'll be good to go. There we go, looks pretty good. Very nice. So, okay, so I'll just finish this drawer up and then 2 more to go, then I'll start doing the fronts. All right, well, I've gone through and cut all the backs of the drawers, all the dovetails. So they're all ready to go. They're all test fitted and ready. So now I'm going to do the fronts, and I'm putting a little more detail into the front. You can see in the back I've got 2 tails, and in the front I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 tails. So a little more detail. So front row I've done already. I've cut on the bandsaw, and I did both drawers, all 4 pieces. So now I'm just laying out the dovetails for the second. So what I'm going to do, they're not going to be they're going to be asymmetrical on both sides, but the spacing will not be quite the same. So what I think I'm going to do here is add another pin on either side. So instead of 4, I'm going to have 6. So I'm going to start by just marking the center, and I'm going to lay them out symmetrically at first and then make an adjustment. So now we want to divide each side into 2 different pieces instead of just one in the center. So I'm going to take 6 inches from that point and bring it up to there. Then I'm going to mark off, well, let me mark a line here. And then every 2 inches I'll just make a little tick mark. Okay, so that will divide it up. So I'm just going to make a little mark here. Okay, so that would give me three tails on each side. So, and they're all symmetric. These are spaced exactly the same. So I think just to be a little bit different, I'm going to move these a little together. So I'll just make another mark. You know, it's fairly arbitrary. I'll just move them 1/8 inch in either direction. Okay, so that's going to be the center here. Okay, I'm going to do the same on the other side now. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do. That's all I need to do. So what I'm going to do now is go over to the bandsaw, and using my little 6-to-1 angle, I'm going to cut these. I'm going to make one cut, flip it over, make the other cut. Then I'm going to take all 4 of these. No, I actually have 8 of these because I have 2 drawers that are the same sizes. So I'm going to take all 8 and just repeat that before I move to the fence. So I'll kind of show you how we're going to do that. So that's all I need to do is lay out one side here. And no, actually I need to make, no, that's all I need to do. So we'll take it over to the bandsaw and show you how that works. I'm going to start with the center and line the blade up right on that center point. And we'll cut, flip, and then do the same for all the rest of the boards, and we'll move out and in and do the same thing. So here we go. Now we're just going to chisel out the waist here. So just using a 1/4-inch chisel. And it's just about the perfect size. Just line that up in the little scribe line there. There we are. Yeah, see, it's just a little different spacing here. I think that's going to look pretty good. Okay, it's time to transfer the tails to the pins here. So start off by placing my locator block right there. And then just get it lined up on the scribe line right there. So that looks pretty good. And put a weight on it, hold it down. Double check. Want to get a good knife cut in there because that's where I'll set my chisel against that line. And if I'm lucky, I'll just make all the chisel out the waist, and it will fit the first time perfectly. This knife works pretty good. because these pins are very narrow and that thin blade fits in there really nicely. Okay, so the next thing I like to do is I darken them in with pencil marks just to make it a little easier to see. It's questionable whether you really need to do this, but I like doing it. Okay. Then I like to grab the blue pencil and just color in the waist a little bit around the edges. It just makes it much easier to see when I'm routing out the waist, because I don't have a lot of room, and just this helps me make sure I don't miss my mark. Okay, and the last thing I like to do is just make a rough mark in the center of the area that I'm removing, and just helps me initially line the router up, because again I don't have a lot of room, and I just put the router in and cut in deep and then work my way to the edges. Okay, so now it's set up, we're ready to route it out. Okay, this is the fixture I made to cut out the waist in the front drawer front. So those of you who looked at my video for the Stickly dresser, you've seen this already. But if you haven't, here's how it works. You just lay the jig flat, set the board there, clamp it in. So now the depth of the cutting bit is just to the scribe line, and the edge of the router comes up right against this stop, and we'll cut exactly to that scribe line that's there. So then I also found it pretty easy to just attach a vacuum hose to it. So I just set that right there, and that holds in place sufficiently. So there we are. So let's get started. So you see the black mark, it's easy for me to just line up the router bit right on it. Then I just plunge forward and then work my way back. So that makes it real easy. So now we just chip out the little bit of waste there. And again, those scribed lines are really important, because what I'm going to do is set that chisel right in the scribe line and chisel down on it. It'll just pick that up perfectly. So it's just a matter of just plowing away here. So I'll show you how we do it. so on and so forth. All right, let's see how it fits here. Very good. See, just the more you do it, the easier it gets. Here's where we're at. Got all the drawers built. You can see my beautiful dovetails there. And I've just been fitting them, just doing minor adjustments, you know, sanding, planing a little bit from the sides or edges to make them fit. So they all seem to be fitting pretty good. So next step is to just seal them, put a little wash of shellac on the inside and outside of the sides, and start putting the bottoms into the drawers, and then just going over the cabinet and just smoothing things out, sanding, and getting it prepared for finishing. Haven't decided yet what I'm going to do. Generally, I like to do oil finishes, maybe tung oil this time, but I started playing around with French polishing, just watching some videos on YouTube about French polishing, so that's a possibility. So we'll see as we get a little bit. I'm just playing with some scraps right now, seeing how it comes out, and maybe we'll do that. The disadvantage of that, it's shellac based, and it's really not that durable. If you set a wet glass or something on it, it could leave a mark, but it is always repairable. So we'll see. All right, last part of the job here before finishing is just putting the bottoms in the drawers. So I'm using this nice cedar, tongue and groove cedar, and so I'm just tapping these pieces in. Like that. All right. Okay, so now I'll just put a few screws in there, and I think I'll just get the hand plane and just trim that off. Okay, one more little thing. I'm just putting a strip of plywood. I'm going to just glue it down just to make it a little stiffer. The cedar isn't quite as rigid as plywood, so this will just help to stiffen it a little bit. Well, we're down to the final stages here, and I've been doing the finishing. So you can see this really high gloss finish on the top. That's French polish. So I'm not going to go into the details of French polishing. There's plenty of good videos on that. But this is the first time I've tried it. And it came out pretty good. I mean, I could even refine it a little bit more and make it even glossier. You just keep putting shellac on it with a French polishing pad. But I really don't want it this glossy, so I'm gonna cut that down with 4/0 steel wool and paste wax. And then it's gonna look like this. So this drawer was also French polished. And I didn't really put as much time into this as I did the top, but then I just used 4/0 steel wool with paste wax, and that's about what I'm looking for. And then this one more coat of paste wax on it. I cheated on this. I didn't really do a French polish per se. I did a little bit of polishing with the pad, but I put on 3 coats of shellac with a brush, just really thin coats. I would say like less than a 1 pound cut. Normally what you'd buy is a 2 pound cut if you just bought your basic shellac off the shelf. But actually what I did is I mixed my own. So I put it in little containers here, but that's blonde de-waxed shellac. And I bought some denatured alcohol, and I think that this is, very close to 99% ethanol instead of mixed with methanol. The methanol is what makes it denatured. But I hear the clean strip is pretty high ethyl alcohol as well, which is good because the methyl is poisonous and want to minimize my exposure to poison. So now these drawers, if you look at them, these have 2 coats of shellac on them. So what I'm going to do is sand them down with 320, 1 more coat, and then I'm going to sand it 1 more time with 320. Then I'm going to apply the French polishing technique to it and rub them out with that, then apply the paste wax. So probably the next, I'm going to stop right there, and the next little part of the video I'm going to do is when it's all put together. Now I'm just waiting for drawer pulls. My daughter hasn't decided yet what drawer pulls to use, and I may also build a mirror to attach to the back. So if she's telling me she's not sure she wants it or not, so we'll see. So anyway, that's where we're at. Next video I show, I'll have burnished this down with steel wool, and it'll be a little more, it'll be like that. Okay, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do this modified French polish. Okay, this is a board that has 2 coats of shellac on it. Real thin. I mean, really watered down, and you can see, it's not that even. Doesn't look great. There's some streaks in it, but I said 3 coats in the last one, but I decided to just do 2 after thinking about it. I think there's enough shellac on here that we can polish that easily, and it will look pretty much just like a French polish. So here's how we're going to do it. First, I'm going to sand it with 320, and so let's do that. Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't really prepare this surface on this board as much as I would like. I can still now, if I'm sanding it, I can see some of the scallops from the planer on here. And I just learned something the other day after watching a video, that it's very hard to get those out, because what the chopping action of the planer does is it actually compresses the wood. So sometimes you sand it and you don't see that it still has the machine marks in it, but they come out when you finish it. So anyway, just learned something. So, but it's going to look good. I mean, I'm not really that picky. I mean, this is going to look pretty darn good. So anyway, just keep sanding it here. True French polishing, when you start, you use pumice to kind of grind the wood, and it fills a lot of the pores. I've got some pores here that if I was doing the real French polish would fill those, and then it would be perfectly flat and smooth. I'm not going to do that. This is good enough. Okay, good enough. Now, I'm not even going to dust this off. I mean, all this is just shellac powder, and that's going to melt right in with the rubbing pad. So here's what we have. This is a French polishing pad. It's just t-shirt rags in the middle and linen on the outside. I'm not going to explain all this stuff. I mean, there's plenty of really good videos on French polishing. So I've got a little shellac in a little cup here. So I'm going to start, just put a little bit more shellac on there, although there's actually plenty on here. Now this pad has been sitting in the jar, and there's plenty of denatured alcohol. It's actually kind of damp, you know. So that's sort of melting some of what's on there already and evening it out. And again, if you know anything about French polishing, please don't tell me that I'm doing it wrong. I know I'm not trying to pretend to really know what I'm doing here, but I think this works. Okay, so there's got some on. Now I'm going to apply a little more pressure and rub it out even more. Okay. Okay, now what I'm going to do is add a little bit of mineral oil to smooth it out, and just a little bit more denatured alcohol. Okay, again, this is mineral oil, non-hardening. That just kind of lubricates it and makes it, you just don't get as much resistance. Okay, now we'll all right, that's pretty good. Put that back in there. Keep it moist. So you can see it already looks a lot better than it did. Now it's not 100%, but I think when I buff it with the 4-aught and the paste wax, I think it's gonna even it out even more and come out really nice. So anyway, it's a little cheater fresh French polish. And if you're not looking for French polish perfection, that will do pretty well. All right, I waited about 5 minutes, let the alcohol flash off, and it's dry. I mean, this is the beauty of shellac, is, I mean, you put it on and it's dry. 5 minutes later, you can sand it. The disadvantage is that it's not as durable, and if you set a wet glass on it, it's going to leave a white ring. But this is a dresser, so it's probably not going to get really high wear and tear. So, okay, I've got a little 4/0 steel wool, and I'm just going to rub it down with paste wax. More. You know, I've heard of French polishing, but I didn't know anything about it. I thought, oh, it's one of those impossible, difficult things that takes years of training to be able to do it, or hours and hours and hours. But I think what I just showed you will give you acceptable results with really not too much effort. All right, make it a microfiber cloth here. Probably should let that wax harden a little bit before I buff it, but like I say, I just want to show you just how easy and forgiving this is. Okay, there it is. That is perfectly acceptable. Not necessarily perfect, but that's a hell of a finish for very little effort. And again, there's not a lot of shellac on it, but still it has quite a nice glow to it. Well, I decided to really get fancy and add a mirror that's going to be attached. So I just borrowed the design from, I think it's the Stickley 913 bookcase. It has a mirror, so I borrowed the design details from that. So I didn't bother video the cutting up and construction of this. But these right and left hand posts have a bit of a taper on it and a little radius at one end. And the mirror itself, just I used miter joints with a, I don't know what you call it, but I can't see it from there. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Just, I guess that's considered a mortise. I can't think of the word, but it's just a block of wood that's just glued in there. And again, just a rabbet for where the mirror is going to go. So this is the back side you're looking at right now. So anyway, that's coming together nicely. It's just going to screw up from the bottom. I've got holes pre-drilled here, and holes drilled into the top of the table here that are just a little wider than the screw. So the screw will just go up and secure it tightly to the tabletop here. Then there'll be some reinforcement on the back as well. So anyway, I'm just going to cut the butterfly keys that are going to go on the front. To cut the little butterfly keys, I just used my dovetail jig that you've seen here, and just cut the key to length here, and you can just make those cuts just like that. Flip it over and do the same. Now to just transfer over to the mirror support, just lay it down on there. I didn't really measure. I kind of eyeballed it. That looks about right. Center line right along the joint there. And I'm just going to clamp it down and scribe it. And that's what you get. And I'm going to hog out the middle of it with a small router, and then just chisel out to the edges that are scribed in there. All right, this one fits pretty good. So I don't want to push it in too hard, it'd be hard to get out, so I think that's good enough. I'm going to leave it proud of the surface anyway, so I'll just hammer it in. Hopefully it's going to hit bottom, I think it will. And then I'll just smooth it out, but again, the intent is to leave that a little bit proud. Okay, that seemed to seat pretty nicely. All right, here's the dresser, 99.9% complete. All right, the dresser is finally complete. Been working on this for about 3 months. Of course, on and off between playing tennis and babysitting and doing other things. But there's a lot of hours into it. So it's in our spare bedroom right now. My daughter, unfortunately, is not going to be able to pick it up with her husband for another month at least, so I've just temporarily moved it out of the garage into the bedroom. But here it is. Got these little butterfly key joints in here. And of course, I'm really proud of my dovetail work on the drawers. All the drawers have cedar lining. And the finish is shellac. The top is basically a French polish, but for the rest of it, I did some of the drawer faces with a French polish, but it was just really easier to brush on multiple thin coats, sand between the coats, and just kind of build it up and then sort of wet sand it with wet dry sandpaper, and it pretty much looks like a French polish. So anyway, that's it. The last thing I did is I cut this arch at the bottom. Originally that was my original thought, was to have that in the design, but then I don't know, I changed my mind and just did it straight across, so it was a lot more difficult to cut that arch after it was already built, but I managed to do it and I'm glad I did. I think it looks much better with that arch at the bottom. It's kind of dark down there, so it's really hard to see, but it looks good. So anyway, this is all made out of rustic walnut, and the first thing I've ever built out of walnut. It came out pretty nice. Very, very happy with it. So, yeah, just show you a couple other things. I made this bed frame. That's out of cherry, and the nightstand. But the rustic walnuts just got a lot of, very interesting grain to it. So I think it's going to look really good in my daughter's house, and I'm sure she's going to be really happy with it. So there it is.